What about psychedelics? Can they be connected to God if used respectfully? The early use of the mushrooms, early Celt Christ churches and Moses using cannabis. Is it drunkenness? Um, there's no evidence that I can see that Moses used cannabis. I think that's quite a statement, Wolf, and I would like to see what evidence you've got for that. And I would really encourage people to really check opinions that might seem strange, to check whether they're actually rooted in something. But in terms of psychedelics generally, I think that God is the one who created us, and He created us to be able to know Him and to enjoy Him, and He created us to do this eternally. And so He has created us with a God spot in our brain. And through experimentation, we've actually identified that God spot, the bit that is connected to the spiritual experience. And so psychedelics are just unnecessary. God communicates and does not need psychedelics to communicate with anyone for any reason. Because He created us, and He created us to be able to enjoy Him and relate to Him. But we shouldn't confuse the kind of psychedelic hallucinations that are brought on by the use of drugs with the spiritual mystical experience. Because the spiritual mystical experience is a communication of God to our subjective self. It is affirming and confirming something to us. It may be a particular vocation or a particular lesson that we need to learn, or a word that we need to hear. Whereas the hallucinations that are brought on by drugs is a manipulation of the mind. And yes, you can make these things into lessons. Of course, you can do that with any human experience, but they're not the same as the kind of revelatory experiences, the mystical experiences that we see within the Christian faith. I don't know of the evidence that talks about early Celtic Christians using mushrooms, though I wouldn't put it past the possibility that some well-meaning monk was out one day picking some mushrooms, not knowing what mushrooms he was picking up, and picking up the wrong kind of mushrooms and having an accidental psychedelic experience. But, that's not beyond the realms of possibility. But to say that they were going about this and doing this habitually, I think is very weak. And the reason why I think it's very weak is because the church gives disciplines. And so if the early Celtic church, by its discipline, by its rule of life, was using psychedelics, the evidence would be well established in the writings of the saints, in the writings of the Celtic church fathers. But it's not. And the reason why it's not is because it didn't. So I would challenge that heavily. I don't think we need to use psychedelics to have an experience of God, even if we use it respectfully with the with the intention of trying to reach God through the use of drugs. I think that it's unnecessary, because if God wants to commune with man, He will create us with the abilities to do so. And He does. And we've even found the place in the brain that is connected to that connection point between where God allows this spiritual experience to emerge from. And that's exactly what we would expect to see if our Creator wanted us to be able to have spiritual experiences.